Oh man, Enter the Dragon. A bit of... The fuck am I, deaf? Jesus Christ. Oh man, Enter the Dragon. A bit of Bruce Lee would be good right about now. But I don't want to just watch Bruce Lee. I want to be Bruce Lee. And how can I satisfy this hunger? I guess I can start by doing 100 push-ups a day, take some Jeet Kune Do lessons, and work my way up to master. It'll take a few years, sure, but the journey will be worth it. All to attain that peak physical condition and mental calmness that Bruce Lee exemplified. From this day forward, I will commit myself to bettering myself and to living up to Bruce Lee's standard. Achha! Oh, a Bruce Lee video game. Well, screw all that then. You know, this game actually looks quite familiar. I think I played it a bit as a kid. I don't really remember anything about it though, and that was so long ago. Well, it's here. Might as well throw it in the good old Xbox 101. I think I'm starting to
You come here to start trouble?
remember.
You destroyed my hard work.
Oh my God!
Y'all know the rules and how the game exists. Don't hate cause I had a handle business, so I had to do it. Rock my had to get down and rock my y'all know the rules and how the game exists. Congratulate and go out and cop my
I, like a lot of people, really appreciate the skills the big-name Chinese martial arts movie stars have used to entertain us for years. Given their prolific status, it's only natural that video games would be based on them. Now, I have a bit of nostalgia for 3 particular titles, each for a completely different reason. These 3 games are among the biggest titles with real likenesses attached to them. The subject of today's video is Bruce Lee, Quest of the Dragon. And as I already gave away in my intro, this game isn't very good. It was actually so bad, that's where my nostalgia for it comes from. This is one of the first Xbox games I ever played as a kid, and I thought this game was trash even then. However, times change, and who I was 15 years ago isn't who I am now. So will I hate this game quite as much? They say you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but sometimes it can be helpful. The front is a bit, what the hell is wrong with Bruce Lee here? He looks like horrible 3D art, and what's more baffling about it is that this pose is taken from Way of the Dragon. This is not an in-game model, so why make the player's introduction in the game be this bland Muppet Bruce? What do we have on the back of the box? Fight as Bruce Lee with motion capture Jeet Kune Do moves. So they actually took the time to get a real martial artist to do the moves, huh? That's pretty cool. Surprise, ambush, and outsmart over 30 different enemies, each with individual AI routines. Ambush and surprise? I guess there's some sort of stealth element to the game, but every enemy getting their own AI systems. That's pretty impressive. Battle your way through London, Hong Kong, and San Francisco in 30 action-packed levels. 30 levels, that's quite a lot for a beat 'em up. I guess the game's got a good length. Fight multiple enemies, Bruce Lee style, with over 100 different moves and an enemy lock-on system. Hot damn, 100 moves? Is this Tekken I'm playing? Those are some pretty impressive sounding box blurbs. I'm getting pumped. Now, I usually like to give a rundown of the story, but instead, let's go back to the back of the game box. You are Bruce Lee, legendary martial arts master. Your father has been kidnapped, your monastery desecrated, and the mystical golden relic, keeper of ancient martial arts secrets, has been stolen. Investigate the mysterious Black Lotus crime organization and the beautiful but deadly Dragon Lady. Use your mastery of Jeet Kune Do to punch, kick, block, and attack crowds of thugs and bosses. In this compelling blend of epic adventure and intense fighting action, you are Bruce Lee. How will you carry on his legacy? There, that's the plot. It's literally as simple as that, except not quite, because this game also manages to tell that story with probably the worst directing that I have ever seen. Scenes almost never flow into each other, much less from gameplay. You will be in an area one moment and the next across the world with no explanation for how you got there. Even when it's not transitioning between locations, scenes make no sense within their own context. Take this scene for example. Lee fought his way through a village and meets this guy, who he thinks knows something about his father.
This time.
What have you done with him?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Mind you, at no point before this was there any indication Lee was specifically looking for this guy. Since the guy refuses to divulge any information, Lee tries to beat it out of him. So he does, and...
What has happened to my father?
He was kidnapped.
Kidnapped? When?
Last week, while you were away. They left this on your father's desk.
The Black
You got a wedgie or something there, bro?
Where did they take him?
Yes, a neighbor overheard one of them mention a restaurant. The Empress of Hong...
What? Where's the guy we just beat up? Considering Lee seems to have to talk to this other guy to get info, was the guy telling the truth about not knowing anything? Did Bruce Lee just violently assault an innocent man? How did we get here? How do we go from submarine to nightclub? Unless the submarine set anchor in the middle of San Francisco, there had to be a pretty sizable gap in between these two scenes. A gap which might explain why Bruce Lee knew to come here. This scene also demonstrates another huge gaping wound in the story. Characters fly in and out with no warning, no explanations, and rarely any resolutions. After arriving at the seaport, for reasons unknown to me, I fought through waves of generic dudes in shirts, only for the end destination to end up being some guy named Lance.
Lance.
You'd think this would be a boss fight, but no. Apparently it's Bruce's longtime friend, making me very confused why I have to fight people to get to him. It's not like he's boarded up in a fortress. He's chilling on the deck of his boat with his girlfriend, and... all of that work results in Bruce and Lance teaming up, and they ride off into the sunset, determined to work together to help Bruce save his father. Lance is in 2 more scenes in this entire game. This one, and at the end of the level when they realize Bruce's father is missing, only for Lance to never be mentioned again. No! There's a woman, whose name I can't be expected to remember, since I think it came up like once, who shows up and...
Why don't you go French kiss a German shepherd?
Why does her voice sound so familiar? I guess her name is Xylon? Hold on a second. Jennifer fucking Hale? Why? Look at this game. Does Jennifer Hale work for anyone that'll give her $5? Actually, looking at this IMDb page, maybe that's true, considering just how many roles she has. Anyways, she shows up in a scene randomly, shows up again infiltrating a hidden base, where Lee again acts like this is someone he's known for a long time.
What are you doing here?
What are you doing here?
Looking for my father. Where is he?
Then shows up again in a skin-tight super spy getup, complete with sunglasses and a SWAT team. You can't just have a character show up like this at the end of the game. She never looked anything like this. Even when I was assuming she was doing some super sleuthing work back there in the cavern, she was in casual attire. Besides, just look at this outfit. She looks like Albert Wesker's global saturation intern. I think I made my point, but I can't let this guy fly by. When we get to the nightclub, we are introduced to...
Brother Tyrone, give me 5. Right on.
Yeah. This guy
Meet my old lady Cleo. Baby, Lee here is one cool cat.
shows up, fights Bruce Lee, and they develop a new friendship based on mutual willingness to engage in cringe-inducing attempts to portray other cultures. But here's the thing. He only shows up in this level. Usually, when a story takes the time to actually show new characters developing a relationship, that's because the new addition is meant to factor into the plot at some point. Instead, this game is perfectly content to just waste your time. But it's not all bad. We did get this scene.
See you on the flip side, brother. Peace!
Oh, and sometimes Lee will just change outfits between scenes, even when it's obvious he wouldn't have the time nor the change of clothes to do so.
Them is fighting words. Don't get me started.
Just get me inside. Then we'll see who's telling the truth.
Come on then.
It's not just the story cutscenes that are directed in the same way a cat jumping on a keyboard would be considered typing. Even something as basic as in-game cutscenes that tell you what's in the level make no sense. Most of the levels just consist of you running into enemy groups, prompting an encounter, and usually this is done with no cutscene. So you'd think that when they do use a cutscene, it'd be to highlight an important piece of information. You know, maybe a new enemy type, a change in your objective, anything. But no, cutscenes are used completely at random. Look, this fight, nothing. Then the next fight, the game takes control from you to literally just have a scene where the bad guys say something along the lines of, "Let's get him."
You don't belong here.
Game. I've literally been fighting thousands of dudes. I'm pretty sure I don't need you to tell me that these guys want to fight. So I brought up Jennifer Hale before. Her being in it might give you hopes for solid acting in this game.
They're being loaded as we speak. Where's my money?
I'm sorry, is that Black Doom from Shadow the Hedgehog?
Feisty. I like this. My price. Just wait till she's coming.
Well, I see how it is, developers. Because he's a Russian, he's a demon. Well, I'm not gonna stand for this racism. Oh, his name's Wolfgang Heinrich. He's German, huh? Well, then don't mind me then. But now that I think about it, Bruce Lee sounds kind of familiar. Well, that's because he's voiced by the same guy who voiced Jackie Chan in what is widely known as the greatest American animated program of all time, Jackie Chan Adventures. I wonder how one obtains the job of martial artist voice double. He does an okay job delivering his lines, but these are by no means great lines to be delivering, with most of them being, "Where's my father?"
Don't you understand, man? She's kidnapped my father.
Or just excuses to make references to the films.
Tables don't hit back.
Don't hit back.
You also got your femme fatale villain sporting the most stereotypical British villain accent.
Do you realize what this means? With a working formula, soon we will have an army of superhumans.
And then you got Novak, played by the guy who voiced Colonel Volgin in Metal Gear Solid 3, sporting the most normal British accent.
Only that she's been smuggling large shipments of weapons across the globe.
We got this fat guy with a voice that sounds like a fart stuck in his vocal cords.
We will meet again.
We got this woman desperately trying to be sexy.
Have what you want.
And we also got...
You don't belong here. Hey, you! I'm talking to you, man.
What's your problem, Jive Turkey? The bomb's dropping on you.
It's not just the voice acting that's completely fucked. It's pretty much every aspect of the audio mixing. Music is oftentimes much louder than the rest of the game. Cutscenes in general have much higher audio levels than gameplay. These are both in the same area of the game. In the cavern area, there's a water dripping sound that's almost as loud as Bruce Lee's wails. Sometimes it sounds like there's two Bruce Lees. During the nightclub section, when
Brother Tyrone
and his girlfriend first see Bruce, it sounds like they are delivering their lines on the opposite side of the room from the microphone.
Who? The enforcer for the Golden Tigers game. Man, he's come to shake us down. I just know it.
Music just kind of exists. It's often too low to pay attention to. That is, of course, when the game isn't trying to deafen you. There's a weird obsession with hip-hop. Bruce never really struck me as a Wu-Tang Clan member. But hey, he lived a life of mystery. And that theme. Oh, who am I kidding? This theme is too adorable to hate. Listen to this desperate attempt to appeal to modern audiences. The other oddity in the soundtrack is a weird Seinfeld bass motif that shows up in random scenes. I get very confused if the scenes that use it are trying to be comedic, or if that farting bass is supposed to be getting me pumped. Okay, so audio and story's down. How about the graphics? Well, you've been seeing the game this whole time. Does this look good to you? The answer's no. Now, I'd be willing to cut this game some slack. This was a very early Xbox game, and you can't expect it to stand up to later games in the generation. Even though Halo and Jet Set Radio Future, two great-looking games, had already come out. But those are real games. Let's cut this game some slack. Come on. Actually, wait. No, I don't. Because the fucking launch title Shrek game looked a million times better than this. The first thing I'm betting anyone noticed is the character models. My god, these character models.
Relic and your father are linked. There lies the question and the answer.
This is Bruce Lee's master. He goes around the entire game looking like he just ate a blueberry pie. Just look at this guy's arms. Is he a T-Rex? Lee's father has a square eye thing going, and the hair on pretty much every model is just awful. Even when they don't look mutated, the models look devoid of any detail. I've seen many Dreamcast games that look better than this. The backgrounds don't look quite as bad as the characters, but it ain't winning any awards. The biggest issue I noticed with them was the very obvious usage of still images to fake backgrounds. While this was still a common practice at the time, in this they are placed so close to the player, you can immediately tell it's basically a painted wall. The jungle level was easily the worst. It looks exactly like a PS1 level, with the game not even hiding that it's a floating platform in an infinite abyss. Come on, devs, at least put some trees around the edges to hide this. Overall, the worse the environments get is bland, so while there's certainly much better looking games in this department, my senses weren't quite as offended as they were with the character models. Alrighty, so it's gameplay time, that big moment you've all been waiting for. And what better way to start than to talk about how much the back of the box lied.
And remember, liars go to hell.
You know what? Let's give the game a bit of reprieve from my bashing. When the game makes the claim of having over 100 different moves, that sounds like a tall tale, but in reality, it's mostly true. Look at this move list. It's indeed massive. It very much so resembles a move list you'd see for a Tekken character. Unfortunately, it takes a while for this move list to fully develop, which does give a really great sense of progression, but it also means you're limited to almost exclusively simple punches and kicks early in the game. This makes the combat in that early portion very basic and very repetitive. First impressions are important, but they aren't always indicative of the entire experience. As the game progresses, not only do you get new combos, but you also get entirely new methods of attack, including access to Y-button power attacks, which control Bruce's most iconic attacks, grabs, and counters. In terms of sheer amount of things Bruce can do, it's probably among the most impressive beat-em-ups I've ever played. So why did I say it was mostly true that Bruce has over 100 moves? Well, the claim the box makes is 100 different moves, but it's counting the same moves but used in a combo. Your standard sweep is the exact same move used at the end of a 3-punch combo as it is by itself, yet the game is counting both of them as separate moves. The 100 figure is also taking into account your moves while equipped with nunchucks, which normally would be okay, however you cannot access your nunchucks at will. It's restricted entirely to specific fights, so the majority of the time you're missing a fourth of your moveset. While the amount of options at Bruce's disposal is certainly impressive, they don't exist in a vacuum, and a large amount of moves can only be a good thing if the game controls well. Quest of the Dragon, being a bad game, of course fails in this department. Free running works well enough, but once you get into combat, you will immediately be able to tell all the problems. You can fight in either locked on or locked off mode. While your actual movement is much more free while locked off, the weird camera angles and the clunky controls make placing your attacks hard, making you risk having Bruce Lee do a flying kick right past his intended target. The developers seem to have mapped a multi-directional punch to the right analog stick to try and combat this, but no matter how precise I was, the punch seemed to just narrowly miss people most of the time. With the problems free range mode gives you, you'd think locking on would pretty much just solve the problems. And while it certainly does make actually hitting people easy, it also brings its own problems. Your controls get a bit of an alteration when locked onto an enemy. Normally, you simply move in whatever direction you press the left thumbstick, but in locked mode, up is now also for jumping and down for crouching. Since these two new functions overlap with your basic movement, you will be in many situations where you are simply trying to go back or forward and instead get a leap or a crab walk. Locking on also seems to sometimes cause your controls to get oriented in a weird way. It's hard to describe, but it feels as though your center of control is no longer on Bruce himself. You have to unlock and then lock back on to readjust the control to get Bruce up and running again. The game also has a hard time mapping out its 100 large move list to the controller, so it resorts to combinations to make up for the shortage of buttons. Unfortunately, the game chooses very odd pairings. Multi-attacks, attacks that are meant to attack multiple enemies at once, are performed by combining the lock toggle button with an attack button. The game isn't very good at actually reading this input, however, and you will be stuck repeatedly switching your target instead of actually getting an attack out. Even simple moves are often tied to directional inputs combined with button presses, and the game has a very similar issue reading these. I try to do forward kick to do a long kick, and the game just moves me forward into a standard kick. To be fair to the game, the control sucking would be a lot more unbearable if the guys you fought could breathe and walk at the same time. Enemies will mostly either sit there and block you or run away, with them really only becoming active if they group up on you. The AI isn't just bad, it's also extremely easy to manipulate. When counters become available, you can take advantage of the fact that enemies will almost always attack you immediately after you lock onto them. Once you memorize the timing of their attacks, you can simply lock on, counter, lock on to the next person, counter, and continue. This makes you nearly unstoppable, with it only failing to work on certain enemies that sometimes open with low attacks. Probably the biggest exploit that really exposes this game's joke of an AI system is crouch blocking during boss battles. You see, if you encounter any boss fight that just seems too hard for you, all you need to do is crouch block. Wait for the guy to attempt to do a crouch combo, and then punish it with 3 punches and then a kick. The AI has absolutely no response to this ingenious tactic, and will just put itself in this loop until dead. And this works for every single boss battle. This trick does technically work on any enemy, but it's not useful unless fighting one-on-one. The few times during bosses I actually broke out from this for shits and giggles, I was amazed to find out bosses seem to have different attacks from each other. But then I figured out a second broken combo and stopped caring. This does a lot of damage and is completely unavoidable for the boss. It also reveals that the back grabs animation is completely broken. Seriously, I never once saw the game do the animation properly. Even the demo reel couldn't get it right. And here's an infinite combo. There's very little reason to actually explore your whole move list, as you will quickly learn all the tricks that break the game. There's the previously mentioned counter routine, but the counter has another broken aspect to it. Usually, a counter's weakness is it requires reacting to an enemy, and if you mistime it, you're left wide open. The counters here have no such issue, and can be mashed infinitely, leaving no room for your opponents to get a punch in themselves. Low attacks can get around your counter, but very few enemies use them. Bruce Lee is also a bit too strong for the game's good, as a single punch is often enough to take out an enemy. What enemies don't die in one hit tend to die in one basic punch or kick combo, limiting a player's incentive to fully explore their options. The game even seems to have trouble warranting the adventure aspect of its action-adventure classification. While you do run around levels in between fights, the game makes sure to make this as linear as possible. As you progress, invisible walls follow behind you, preventing any free exploration. These walls litter the entire game as well, even in places that literally make no sense. There's no collectibles, no extras of any sort. You simply do a fight, then run to the next fight, and try to find your way around the invisible walls. Yeah, it's standard in beat-em-ups to have nothing but combat, but most of them make up for that by having a fight pretty much happening all the time.
Speaking of which, Wayforward, get off your lazy asses and make Double Dragon Neon 2, you lazy piece of shit!
Quest of the Dragon has a lot of downtime for no particular reason. But Grant, I hear you say, the box claims you can surprise, ambush, and outsmart your enemies. And I reply, yes it does, and I would recommend not getting your delicate hopes up, because unless by all three of those things the box meant go up and fight dude identically to the last, no seriously, 3,000 guys, then it was lying.
So there was going to be a skit here. It was going to show in the player info menu that I had literally fought 3,000 enemies. That was about halfway through the game, so by the end of the game I would have probably fought about 6,000 enemies. So that was the plan, but the issue was, I went to look at the footage for it, and I hadn't actually recorded it, or at least I can't find it. So I'm like, alright, no problem. I'll just load up the game again, and I'll record it there. All my data should be saved. Even though I beat the game starts you over with all your moves and everything. And also, when you hit continue, it also gives you the option to play the last level again. So it should have maintained all that. Problem was, I start up the game, I notice challenges aren't there anymore. Challenges are there when you beat the game. I go to continue the game, I start over from the monastery, first level, and all my moves are gone. These are the things that you're supposed to have upon completing the game. Now the thing is, maybe I overwrote the game completing save, so that could be why. However, the thing is that I'm on hard mode on this new save, and that's only unlocked after having beaten the game. So the game has to in some way be acknowledging I beat the game. So, effectively what it means is, I guess randomly when you do a new game plus, the game might just actually delete all your data and basically fuck you over. So, I don't have any of that progress anymore, so I can't record that, but take my word for it, I fought at least over 6,000 enemies.
There are no opportunities to use downtime to find creative approaches to situations. Just run that damn straight line. There's many instances where you can actually see the next group of enemies before the fight, and they're simply standing there, waiting for you, or running around in circles like they're having a mental breakdown.
Help him! He's too fast!
Again, it's not out of place for fighters to be this straightforward, but most of them at least have the dignity to have enemies surprise you by spawning in or something, instead of just having the AI take its union-required break in full view. The so-called 30 levels on the game box is also a lie. It's considering each section of a level to be its own level. And I'm sorry, but I refuse to consider a 2-minute segment to be a full level. Oh, and I'd love to see those 30 different AI routines sometime. Maybe over dinner? There's no sense of logic to any of the design of Quest of the Dragon. As I said before, nunchuck fights happen completely at random against random enemies. You never even get a boss fight with them. Kinda weird to introduce a whole fighting system to literally only use it on random mooks. There's also 2 separate boss fights that you just need to do twice in a row. Some random army guy and the final boss. At least the final boss can kind of excuse this with it being the final boss, but the other guy doesn't get this luxury. You just beat him, and then a cutscene plays where he's basically like, forget it, I'm good, let's go again.
Ready for round 2.
And then you go again. It's not even a gauntlet type thing where you have to do 2 fights on 1 health bar. Your health refills between matches, so it's literally just a waste of time. There's also a belt rank system that acts as a level up, going from white to dragon, except the game doesn't actually give you all the upgrades you can get by dragon, so you have to start over from white to get stronger. There's a mechanic unlocked from the very beginning, which has Lee spending dragon coins to make himself temporarily unblockable and take almost no damage, which completely destroys any enemy type. You'd think such coins would be rare, but they aren't. I found myself regularly stockpiled with over 100 of the coins, so I basically went through the game with a designated fuck off button for whenever I started to get annoyed. Sometimes fights are decided to be time trials, except every time I managed to win the fight in time, nothing happened. No medal or power up, no anything. There's a pickup called fire damage that enemies drop that gives you free dragon coin mode, except instead of having a single shrinking power bar to show you how long it's gonna last, they instead made it refill every time it runs out, until it's actually out. All the while, Lee's hands keep bursting into flames. So with everything wrong with the game, I'm about ready to just throw it away and declare it the cheap cash-in title we all know it is. Nobody cared on the development team, so why should I? I would say this if there wasn't also a great deal of love shown to Bruce Lee, his style, and his films throughout the game and the game manual. Other than the previously mentioned moves and lines taken from the films, there's more subtle references as well. Dragon Lady from this game is made to look very similar to Billy Lowe's girlfriend on the poster for Game of Death. The black guy from the club is a parody of frequent appearances of similar afroed black guys in Lee's films. The costumes Bruce randomly switches between tend to be direct references to characters in his films, such as Chen Zhen from Fist of Fury, Chang from Way of the Dragon, and while not the right color, he has a jumpsuit costume similar to Billy Lowe's from Game of Death. The game manual is loaded with Lee quotes, and a forward that talks all about how they hired one of Bruce's students to do the motion capture, and the various styles represented in the game. Okay, so maybe represented is a strong word. There's even a passage under the belt system explanation that talks about how Jeet Kune Do does not have belts, and that the belts used in the game were simply to help players get a sense of progression. Most devs wouldn't take the time to explain that, and there does seem to be a genuine love for Bruce and what he represented here. Honestly, my best guess for why the game turned out like this? Inexperience, plain and simple. Ronin Entertainment, the developers behind this game, had developed 3 previous titles to this. Neo Hunter, which was a point-and-click adventure game, Armor Commander, which was a real-time strategy game, Star Wars Force Commander, which was also a real-time strategy game. And then they went straight to Bruce Lee. Now that's a big difference in genre there, and that's going to have an effect on the title. But maybe I'm giving Ronin a bit too much credit here. While I can't find any reviews to guess the quality of Neo Hunter, and the one review for Armor Command I could find indicated that it was a run-of-the-mill RTS, Star Wars Force Commander has plenty of reviews to indicate that it wasn't very good. To be fair, I haven't played any of these games, so I can't judge for certain, but I think it's pretty safe to assume, given that Ronin pretty much fell off the face of the earth after the failure of Quest. They apparently even had a game called Legend of the Blade Masters in development that never saw the light of day. The past can give us valuable insight to the present, and right now that insight is telling me Ronin Entertainment was staffed by pigeons. Oh my god, there's a job opening! I could become a Ronin! I don't know, you think maybe I should cut that pigeon comment out? Oh, and while looking through the manual, I saw that there's a training mode, but I never used it, nor do I care, so bye. Alright, I'll do it! As I expected, I wasn't missing much with the training mode. It's just a blue void where you can practice your technique on Bruce's teacher. However, what I almost missed was the challenge modes, or as I like to call them, what? There's 3 different challenges: time, survival, and ultimate, except I couldn't figure out any difference between them. All of them have timers, and all of them are boss rushes. The only difference I could see was ultimate forces you to fight every boss twice. These modes also have a weird quirk where it always states every round is round 2. My best guess is this mode was the last minute add-on on a game that already has an unstable at best main campaign, so it got even less attention. Sometimes love isn't enough, and that's the case with Bruce Lee Quest of the Dragon. The game controls like ass, the story is both paper thin and completely incomprehensible, characters fly in and out with no warning, cutscenes are laughably terrible, AI is brain dead, and the game is repetitive as all hell. Nothing about the direction of this game works, and it manages to completely ruin its own potential in its combat system. When I played this game as a kid, I couldn't stand the play past the first level, and the only reason I saw anything past that was because I watched my brother play it. I was returning to this game expecting crap, and that's exactly what I got. But I actually came away from this game with a weirdly positive experience. Yes, it's bad, but it's adorably bad. It's The Room bad. Ah!
did not hit her. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
Everything about it fails in such a way that it made me hooked, just to see what they could fuck up next. I had to see this wonderfully stupid story through to the end. And my reward was a fight with a bowler hat wearing British gentleman who takes a super soldier drug only for the developers to fail to make any changes to his model to show his increase in power.
As bad as this game is, I have to recommend it. It's just too damn funny to miss. Especially considering how cheap it is. I got this good condition case with manual, about $7. So if you're looking for a notable addition to your Xbox Classic library, pick up Bruce Lee, Quest of the Dragon. Well, my old friend, that's the afterlife calling. It's time you join your Ronin friends wherever Dead Game Studios go.
This isn't a landfill. Keep your trash.
If you're seeing this, that means you made it to the end of the video, and for that, I'd like to thank you, every one of you. Unless, of course, you just rewound at the end of the video and are seeing this because of that, in which case I would recommend rewinding back so you can watch the whole video. Of course, it's your choice, but I'd really appreciate it, and I hope that you wouldn't be missing out on something, at least that was very special to me. This was a very big learning experience for me, actually. I learned a lot about video editing, more advanced techniques. It's still nothing spectacular. I'm not, I don't have that bloated head yet. Just wait. Give me a few videos till I master my craft, then I'll get that, big bloated head. I'll be the Stanley Kubrick. Or, no, I'm sorry, I'll be the James Cameron of YouTube. But it was still very time-consuming, and it was very much so a learning experience. I'm doing a lot of this really without any training. It's just stuff I'm picking up as I go along because I'm writing about something that I have a lot of passion in, which is, all forms of media, the art of storytelling. So, and my hope right now is that I am going to continue making it and just better my craft. That's my biggest thing right now, is I want to be able to make bigger and better YouTube videos. Well, actually, maybe smaller, because this was a pretty long video. Certainly a lot longer than I was expecting it to be. But if you want to watch me on that journey, make sure you hit that like button, and really importantly, hit that subscribe button so that you get all the notifications. Likes, of course, help me in the algorithms, which will get me more views, and views aren't a bad thing. So, there you go. Alrighty, and have a good night, guys. Thank you. Guys and girls, and anybody else watching.